Greetings, everybody. I'm back. We'll be doing Chapter 7. Last week I started a brand new job, which means I have less time to sit down and do recordings. So hopefully you guys aren't too disappointed, but I'll try to get these out when I have the time and when I have the energy. In addition, the week before that I was sick, and that was because the week before that I was in New Orleans and I drank myself like crazy, so that's why I got sick, and then now I have a job, so blah, blah, blah. A lot of stress. And I'm a late bloomer, so it takes a little while to adapt. But I'm feeling good, and I'm going to put this one out, so thank you again. Let's get back to it. Chapter 7. Gangland Goes Hollywood. Few of the millions of people who yearly gawk at the tasteless and boring Academy Award ceremonies are aware of the ignominious raison d'etre of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. The Academy was the brainchild of Louis B. Mayer, who gave the monster dinner party in 1927 at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, which launched the Academy. Mayer founded the Academy as a, quote, company union, end quote, to combat the legitimized unionization of directors and actors and to block the emergence of screen talent guilds. Mayer and the other studio heads intended the Academy to be the contract arbitrator between the studios and the talent groups. Since it was totally a creation of the studios, it was arbitrational impartiality can well be imagined. During the 1930s, the struggle to create legitimate craft guilds in Hollywood was bitter and prolonged. One of the results of the studio's anti-labor stance was the scandalous IATSE affair. In 1934, the International Alliance of Theatrical State Employees, that is the union that encompasses theater projectionists, art directors, makeup men, gaffers, grips, and stagehands, fell into the hands of two racketeers from Chicago. These two supergoons were George Brown, the new IATSE president, and his associate in crime, Willie Beoff. Beoff was the more aggressive of the pair and had the entire motion picture industry by the balls for nearly 7 years. It began in the Windy City early in 1934. Brown and Beoff, an ex-pimp with the physique of a burly Greek wrestler, he had been arrested a few years earlier for running a whorehouse, were moving into the union business and putting the squeeze on the Balaban and Katz Theater circuit. Balaban, head of the circuit, he was later to become president, then chairman of the board of Paramount Pictures, had offered Brown, the union representative, a measly bribe of $150 a week to ensure that Brown would never forget an agreement to raise theater employees' wages. Beoff, on behalf of Brown, spurned the offer and demanded a flat $50,000. Balaban refused. His refusal triggered a series of mishaps at B&K movie palaces, the Oriental, the Uptown, the Tivoli. Film was run backward. One Night of Love, a Grace Moore musical, was shown without sound, the image blacked out during the motel scene of It Happened One Night. All over town, angry patrons were demanding refunds. B&K began to realize the extent of Beoff's clout. The payoff was paid. Within days, booze and blondes had loosened the tongues of Brown and Beoff. Their independent new racket and newfound fortune came to the mob's attention. Frank the Enforcer Needy. Oh my God, that is an awesome name. Frank the Enforcer Needy, a crone of Al Capone, was intrigued, especially when he learned that Brown and Beoff were about to make a real killing, creaming in a small fortune from Balaban and Katz by not calling a projectionist strike, which would have closed down most of Chicago's movie theaters. Nitti was an organizer. He immediately sensed that the racket could be organized on a national scale, which would deliver the entire movie industry into his hands. Nitti sent Cherry Nose Geo, oh my God, Cherry Nose, okay, that's a good name. Cherry Nose Geo and a few other picturesque thugs to the office of the IATSE stagehands local, of which Brown had been business manager since 1932. The message to Brown and Beoff was clear. Needy was cutting the syndicate in for half of their labor racket. To emphasize the message, 2 contracts were sent out. T.E. Malloy, head of the projectionist Local 110, and Louis Altery, president of the Janitors Union, were riddled with shotgun blasts. Oh my God. The syndicate was promptly cut in. Yeah, I bet they were. Needy's next step was to push George Brown into a figurehead presidency of the National Union. If it could be done in the Windy City, it could be done on a bigger scale. Plans to rig the next union election at the IATSE convention in Louisville were hatched in a series of conferences between Needy and such notorious underworld figures as Paul the Waiter Luca. Oh, I love these names. Lepke Buchalter of Murder Incorporated, and of course Lucky Luciano. Luciano guaranteed that the New York delegation would tilt to Brown. Beoff imported a squadron of goons from Chicago to ensure Brown's election. The new president immediately appointed Bioff as international representative. Bioff went straight to Tinseltown. From then on, Brown faded into the background and Bioff became the syndicate's chief negotiator. Bioff sent to Chicago for beefy goon squad reinforcements. Opposing unions were quelled by threats and beatings. Oh boy, dissident craftsmen in the studios were persuaded, quote-unquote, to join IATSE. The studio heads were soon given to understand that if Bioff didn't get what Bioff wanted, money, and lots of it, the film industry would grind to a halt because the projectionists strike all over the country. Bioff and Brown soon went bi-coastal and were paying call on Nick Schenck, president of Lowe's Incorporated, which controlled MGM from New York. Bioff demanded a cool $2 million or else. Schenck had held a hurried conference with Sidney Kent, president of the 20th Century Fox. They decided to make a united stand against the gangsters. It was soon made clear to them that Bioff's threat to strike shut every studio in Hollywood was not an idle menace. The following day, Kent and Schenck paid call on Bioff at his room in the Warwick Hotel. Schenck brought $50,000 in cash in a brown paper bag. Kent brought $25,000. At the height of his power, Bioff ordered studio moguls about like office boys. On one occasion, when the gateman at Warner's refused to let him in without a pass, Bioff phoned Jack Warner and ordered him to come down and usher him inside personally. On another, when Bioff refused to negotiate with Paramount, her studio head, Ernst Lubitsch, felt obliged to pay him a personal visit. Bioff forced the studios to appoint him their agent for the purchase of raw film stock. Jules Brulator, distributor of Eastman stock in Hollywood, was obliged to accept this extortion or risk a bomb in his warehouse. Bioff received a 7% commission on all film stock bought by MGM, Fox, and Warner's. By this means, the syndicate ranked in over $150,000 a year. Bioff took huge bribes in return for keeping down wages for IATSE members. He then upped their dues $1,500,000 yearly. These sums were all split with the syndicate. The beginning of the end came for Bioff when he alienated the feisty and scrupulously honest old editor of Daily Variety, Arthur Unger. Unger could not be won over, not by bribes, not by threats. He soon began campaigning against the excrescence from Hollywood. Unger found an ally in Robert Montgomery, president of the Screen Actors Guild. Montgomery was alarmed at Bioff's attempt to move in on SAG. He hired a private eye to delve into Bioff's past, uncovered evidence of Bioff's sentence for pimping, and offered the information to Unger for use in the pages of Daily Variety. Unger and Montgomery's campaigns began to hit home. Westbrook Pegler, syndicated Hearst columnist and muckraker, joined them and published stories excoriating the pimp IATSE leader. The fat really hit the pot when the federal government, which had been waiting for an opportunity to pounce, became alerted through tax inspectors to be a $100,000 check from Joseph M. Schenck made out to Bioff. Schenck, chairman of the board of the 20th Century Fox and president of the Motion Picture Producers Association, claimed and then later testified that he had given Bioff the money as a loan. When the facts of the payoff were revealed, the veteran Schenck, he had produced most of Buster Keaton's great silent films, was convicted of perjury and sentenced to a year in prison. His citizenship was revoked. Schenck, however, who had habitually been a hefty contributor to the Democratic Party campaigns, was soon granted a pardon by President Truman. His citizenship was restored and he returned to Fox as an executive producer. One studio head after another came forth to confess their hanky-panky with corporation books in order to bribe IATSE's distinguished international representative. Bioff and Brown were charged before a federal grand jury in New York on May 23, 1941, of extorting huge sums of Fox, Warner Brothers, Paramount, and MGM. Bioff was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Brown got 8. Bioff was sent to Alcatraz and blabbed. He named 7 Chicago mobsters as the gang who had set up his shakedown on the movie industry. One of the 7 was Frank Nitti, Al Capone's ex-enforcer. The day the indictments were returned, Nitti shot himself in the head on a railroad track in a freight yard in a Chicago suburb. When Bioff was released from prison, he settled in Phoenix, Arizona as Willie Nelson stock investor. And it's not the Willie Nelson that we've all heard. On November 4, 1955, he was preparing to go to the Phoenix brokerage to check up on his stocks. He got in his car, turned the key, and was blown sky high. Who put the bomb under the hood's hood was never been discovered. Or if it has not been revealed. The most memorable residue of the entire sordid affair can be traced to a meeting of the Motion Picture Producers and Distributors of America that had been called to discuss coming to terms with Bioff. On that occasion, Samuel Goldwyn, the Prince of Hollywood, malapropisms, uttered his most ineffable one-liner. "Gentlemen," he said, reaching for his hat, "include me out." And that is the end of chapter 7. Thank you for listening.